Hey, and welcome back. I've played and owned a number of different drum sets over the years, but one brand I've not been able to have much experience with is Sonor. I think it's always been a slightly harder brand to find here in the US due to it being a German company, but they are certainly one of the more respected brands for their innovation and quality of their instruments. Before we get too far along into the video, I want to extend a huge thank you to Sweetwater for sending me this kit. Sweetwater is the largest online retailer of musical instruments and pro audio equipment in the United States, and they pride themselves on always having the best prices, availability, and of course, their world-class customer service. I've personally relied on Sweetwater regularly for well over 10 years, and I can't recommend them enough. Whether you're looking for small accessories like sticks and heads, or full kits and instruments, I hope you'll consider shopping with Sweetwater and using my links below to let them know I sent you their way. Of course, some Sweetwater candy. First things first, some floor tom legs, and I'm always a fan of when companies choose to use a thinner tubing on these, because in my opinion, there's no reason for them to be the ultra thick style. I don't really need that kind of support from a floor tom leg. All right, here's the tom bracket. And one thing that I thought was interesting about this is that it comes with a little mini cymbal boom arm so that you could save on bringing a cymbal stand and just mount this right off the kick drum like your rack tom. I'm not usually a fan of that look or style, but I'm excited to try it. All right, so here's the first look at the actual drums. And as you can see, I went with black sparkle. Something classy and understated is nice, and yeah, this is beautiful. One nice touch too, they took off the wing nuts on the floor tom legs, probably so that it wouldn't poke anything else around in the box, which just shows their level of care in packaging these drums, even on their more student line economical series. My guess would be this is the snare drum. The top of the box says 14 by 6.5, but when I looked at the description of this kit, it was a 13-inch snare, so maybe that's just the size of the box? Yeah, this is definitely a 13. This is probably the one thing I wasn't excited about when I saw this kit. As someone who plays a lot of brushes, I'm very accustomed to a 14-inch snare drum, and when I play on smaller drums, since I use the full surface area of the head, it can be a challenge. So I'm open to trying it out and seeing if it's just a quick thing in my head or if it actually becomes an issue and this snare drum is hard to play with this kit. Nice throw off, and again, just nice fittings and hardware. I do see a little snare bed, which sometimes on these entry-level kits, they don't even cut a snare bed. It's not super wide or deep, so I imagine you wouldn't want to use like 42 strand snare wires, but you could probably fit something wider than this, which is probably like 16 strand, something kind of normal. Nice looking drum. All right, we have the two bass drum heads, which I'll have to attach. My guess is the rack tom is inside the bass drum. Here's the rack tom, 12 by 8 inch, pretty standard size. One thing that I really liked about this when I saw it was direct to shell tom mount, no worrying about suspension mounts or any of that. I know plenty of people like that and prefer it, but I like the sturdiness of a direct to shell mount, and I've never needed more sustain than I can get from tuning it just open anyways. So that always works fine for me, and it's a nice convenience. This style of spur, where it's more just like a floor tom bracket, I've always found those hard to replicate the exact position I want at a gig. Everything else looks really great and high quality, and again, the finish is beautiful on these. All right, and then also with the bass drum, we have the hoops, and one interesting thing to note about these is they're not a matching finish or a wrap, or even like an inlay with the wrap. They're kind of a contrasting color, just a flat natural finish. I really like that. Some people don't. Personal preference. And then lastly, it looks like we have all the tension rods and claws for the bass drum. And then in here we have the two bass drum spurs. So let's go ahead and get this thing set up. So while I get this kit set up, let me tell you a little bit more about these drums. Sonor's AQX line is a great starting point for getting into drums, as they are very competitively priced, but include a variety of high-quality features not found in other entry-level lines of drums. Some of these features include 100% poplar shells, Sonar's smart mount tom and cymbal mount, and die-cast lugs. These drums come in 3 sparkle wrap finishes and a variety of different size configurations, so you can find the exact setup to suit your desired sound. Additionally, a few of these kits come with full sets of hardware and cymbals, which is great for beginners getting into drums for the first time. Sweetwater posted a great video with Nick DiVirgilio going over the jazz, jungle, and micro setups in this line, and that was a great resource to me as I made my choice on their jazz configuration. Before taking these drums outside of the house to test on some gigs, I wanted to record a demo of the kit with the stock heads and get a feel for what these drums can do right out of the box. You'll hear a few different tunings, and I recorded all of this audio with a simple 2-mic setup of an SE Electronics V-Kick on the bass drum and a Shure KSM32 as an overhead. So before taking these drums out into the real world, I wanted to swap the heads to more of my preferred setup in order to have a better reference of these shells compared to the drums I more typically use. On the snare, I'm using a Remo-coated Ambassador. On the 2 toms, I'm using Remo-coated Vintage Ambassadors, which are between the thickness of an Ambassador and Emperor, and offer me great versatility in sound. And finally on the bass drum, I'm using a Remo-coated Powerstroke 3. The first gig I'd be taking these drums to was at a small winery with a jazz trio. I play a lot of small spaces like this where the room is far from ideal acoustically, so having a kit that can be controlled sonically is important to me. One way I work to contain my volume is playing with brushes, but having drums that don't take off too quickly with sticks is important as well, because I don't want to be restricted in how I'm playing due to the equipment not working for me, but against me. After 3 hours playing on this kit, I was certainly feeling comfortable on it, and had no issues tuning these drums up for a nice bebop sound. The only adjustment that took a bit longer to get settled in on though, was the 13-inch snare. I was trained to use the full surface area of the head when I play brushes, so even with a 1-inch smaller area, I did have to adjust my technique in order to not get the wires of my brushes caught within the hoop. The next day, I had a gig with a big band that I play with regularly, and I think this was a good chance to not only tune these drums down and test the versatility, but also explore some of the functionality. The stage here is pretty small, and with 14 other musicians up there, space is a real premium. Having things like a cymbal arm attached directly to the bass drum saves me a bit of space and made my fellow musicians on stage a bit more comfortable as well. In a perfect world, I like to use a slightly bigger bass drum with a big band, but I was surprised with how well I could hear the impact and punch of the kick coming through the horn section by just tuning the drum down a bit. I know that it can be very common to mic a bass drum to have it cut through a band, but in my opinion that's just not part of the big band tradition, so I was very pleased that I could get a full sound without reinforcement. A few days later, I brought these drums back down into the studio because I'd been asked to record a demo for a friend of mine doing some jazz arranging. I thought this would be a great chance to record this kit with some proper heads for the genre, and overall I was impressed by the results. Even with just a limited miking setup of 2 overheads, kick and snare mic, I felt like I got great tone and clarity from each drum, and didn't have to spend much time at all EQing or adding post-processing to these drums in order to get a great sound. Before making a final determination on this kit, I really wanted to explore using these smaller sized drums in a more contemporary setting like pop, funk, or rock. I had a gig with my 8-piece funk band, and thought this would be a great opportunity to swap out the heads and see how far I could push these drums sonically. I left the snare head the same, but swapped out the 2 toms for Evans hydraulics, which I think have a great sound for musicians playing smaller rooms where you don't have mics on every drum. They sound almost pre-EQ'd and gated, and can be a bit quieter on stage as well. For the bass drum, I used an Aquarian Super Kick, which I think is an easy way to get a punchy kick sound without the need for too much muffling. On the resonant side of the bass drum, I also added a ported head so I could drop a microphone inside. If the venue looks familiar, that's because this gig was at the same spot as the previous big band gig. It's a fun but boomy room to play in, but at least in this case I had a bit more space to set up. I thought these drums did a great job adapting to a genre that usually requires me bringing bigger drums. Obviously I needed to mic the kick drum up to cut through the amplified instruments and horn section, but I think that's typical of any size drum in this musical setting. On this gig, I also use a clap stack, and that included cymbal arm was perfect for sneaking that in just below my ride cymbal, and saved me needing to bring an extra stand. And as much as I didn't enjoy the 13-inch snare on the jazz gigs due to the challenge with brushes, I thought it really shined on this gig where I could crank it up a bit more. So after getting the chance to try this kit not only with its stock setup in my home, but in a variety of live and studio settings, I think I can say with confidence that these drums would be a great purchase for somebody looking for an affordable set that's compact, but also versatile for a wide range of genres. The poplar shells make it easy to get a great sound, and the hardware outfitted on this kit make it durable and efficient for constant setup and teardown. Despite my initial concern, the bass drum spurs were quite sturdy and easy to work with. The tom mounting system is ultra convenient and very flexible for an infinite variety of positioning. And finally, the snare throw felt good on the hands and worked well turning on and off. I love that Sonor has 3 different shell packs in the smaller sizes, all with the included cymbal arm. I think that's great for drummers looking for a second kit that may work better in rehearsals and small venues. And as someone who hauls around drums multiple times a week, it's great being able to save space in the car and on stage, but not have to sacrifice the sound or quality of the instrument. On the other hand, if you're a beginner just getting started, these AQX drums are a really affordable option for a set with hardware and cymbals, while still offering some really high quality features on the shells that most other brands can't compete with. If I could change anything about this kit, it would probably be the snare. I think a 14-inch drum would be much more universal for this jazz setup, but I understand the fit of a 13 on the micro and jungle setups. And in fact, on the complete sets with 20 and 22-inch bass drums, it does come with a 14-inch snare. Once again, I want to send a huge thank you to Sweetwater for sending me this kit to check out. They are simply the best when it comes to availability, price, selection, delivery, and most importantly, customer service. If you have any other questions about this kit or any other Sonor drum set, I know they'd be happy to help you in finding the right set for you. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel so you can stay up to date on all of my future video releases. And until next time, thanks.